And good baseball fans, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tonight, we'll be taking a broad look across the baseball landscape. Lots of news, lots of baseballs happening. We're going to start, of course, with our headlines, which involve an expansion of the Cleveland Guardians gambling ring. We're going to talk about what's going on with Emmanuel Clase and what's going on there in Cleveland. Also, Bryce Harper yelling at Rob Manfred. Oh, yeah, no, there's no labor lockout coming. No, we're fine. Everything's good. We're just yelling at the commissioner of the league. Yeah, everything is going to be fine. Also, we have a legend passing away. We're going to talk about the passing of Ryne Sandberg, and also injury news as several All-Stars go to the IL over the past couple of days. We then, of course, have our live score update. It's Tuesday night, so everybody's playing, so we're going to check around the league and see how things are going. We, of course, have our Who's Hot and Who's Not segment, where we take a look at who's been playing well and who's maybe not doing so great as we approach the trade deadline. And we have our upcoming series to watch for the weekend ahead. There are some good matchups as we head towards the final third of the season. We then have our minor league baseball spotlight, where we take a look at the minors, because there's plenty of great minor league baseball going around as well. And then hot topic of the week, the trade deadline. What has happened so far, and what are some possibilities coming up over the next 48 hours. And of course, our Around the Diamond segment, where we talk about whatever's on our mind. We've got all that and more coming up on the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. You got Mike Patt, Ricky K, and we'll be right to it right after a word from our sponsors.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
And once again, welcome in to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Once again, reminder to please follow us on all social media platforms at IE Sports Radio. Visit the website, iesportsradio.com. And of course, if you're a fan of the Bullpen Bulletin, if you like what you hear tonight or a fan previously, do be sure to follow us on X. You can follow the show at BP Bulletin _ISR. You can follow Ricky, my colleague here, at Rickinator555. You can follow yours truly at IESR_DMV. And you can follow Alden, normally our third party, not available with us tonight, at VAZTRL. And without further ado or further introduction, let's get right to it because there is tons of baseball news. In fact, I think this might be the most headlines we have had to date on this show that we're going to run through before we get into our live score update. And we're going to start with potentially, I would argue maybe the oddest or the most random storyline of the 2025 MLB season to date. So previously, Cleveland Guardians pitcher Luis Ortiz was put under investigation from the league for purported gambling purposes. He was basically accused, or he's being investigated of intentionally, throwing pitches that lined up with bets and things like that to get certain results in the gambling ring. And now closer Emmanuel Clase has undergone a similar investigation, reviewing his pitches and how they line up with gambling bets and prop bets and stuff. Very strange. Pretty random, although, I mean, it's not like the MLB is completely has no history of gambling problems. There are certainly plenty if you go back through the history books of the league. But Ricky, what is your take on this? Is there a gambling ring going on in Cleveland? Like, what is the situation with these Guardians?
It's tough to say, and again, you got to look at it this way. It's right now is on leave. So we have to, of course, preface it with we don't think it's fully proven, but it's enough where he's at least on leave right now. And I think what you look at, this is a bigger deal than the Ortiz thing because of who Emmanuel Clase is. This is one of the best closers in the game. This is one of the stars in the game. And you think about, we talk about all this with gambling and how much it's advertised during sporting events with DraftKings, FanDuel, and all these things. This is what the league feared when this kind of stuff happened. Now, we don't know kind of the specifics of the Class A stuff. We only really know what the Luis Ortiz stuff kind of, if they're looking at the whole like first pitch and things like that. I don't think I've seen anything in regards to what Class A, what kind of tipped that. And this is also big because I think, and Jim Bowden tweeted it yesterday, I think he would have got traded. I really do believe that the Guardians would have found a way to trade him because reliever market is high. I think the Guardians have him on a very team-friendly contract. They could have really got something to help their team in the long term, even though they were still in the race. Now they're probably looking to sell again. We can get into that a little bit later. But I'm interested to see what happens with the investigation with Class A. And is anybody else with Cleveland? Because if a third player pops up, it's hard to think baseball's not going to act on Cleveland in some way, shape, or form. Even though they may not be complicit, it may just be, well, there's something going on that you guys are clearly not seeing. So there's so many layers to unpack, but the ripple effect of it, of a star player like Clase in this, is really going to think that Rob Manfred needs to do something else about this, but time's going to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Just very strange and unfortunate timing for Cleveland, who, like you said, they were kind of in between. Could they have come together and maybe made a push in the race, or were they looking to sell? And obviously, Class A was one of their top pieces that would have been available on the market for teams to make a trade for. Probably could have gotten a significant haul, especially with another closer, Felix Bautista, who was rumored to be on the market going down with injury. He probably won't be on the market either. So just like that, the reliever market has dried up pretty quickly, probably why some of the moves we've seen for relievers already have happened. And I'm sure they will start to happen more and more. But before we move on, we got a couple people jumping in the chat. We got Larry B in this evening saying, first pitch. Yes, sir. We've got Taryn saying, good evening, Ricky. No good evening for Mike, just for Ricky. Oh, wait, no, he does get it in later in there. So Taryn saying good evening to both of us, and Brian Francione in with us as well. So that's the strange news. Now for the probably more expected news of the day. So a reported meeting occurred with the Phillies' Bryce Harper and MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred. And supposedly this meeting, well, let's just say it didn't go very well. To some extent, it appears that Harper told Rob Manfred to say, and I approximately quote, get the F out of our clubhouse. So that's great news. Of course, all of these discussions and all of these, these heated conversations coming up with the collective bargaining agreement, coming to the current collective bargaining agreement coming to its end, I believe at the end of 2026. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Ricky. And of course, the intense discussions going around the words salary cap. Now, we have a full article that will be up on the IE Sports Radio blog by the end of the week regarding our opinions on the salary cap situation. But independent of that, Ricky, the main thing I want to focus on is, do you think the league is destined, headed for another lockout because of what is likely to be discussed over this salary cap debate?
I do, because I think that I don't think Rob Manfred is making these meetings to different teams unless the owners are in on this. Because let's remember, Rob Manfred speaks for the owners. As much as he's the commissioner of the game, as all commissioners, he's on the owner's side in the negotiations. So when you look at it from the standpoint, and if the owners are going to dig in, it's the one thing in the sport that players don't want to hear about is the cap. Because to me, and again, you can read this at the end of the week, and I kind of said it on Second and Scheming before I came on here. The idea of a cap is ridiculous. Now, I think the floor makes sense because we already have a cap. It's called the Steve Cohen tax. It's called, when you see the Mets get it, the Dodgers get it, the Yankees get it. If teams go over certain thresholds, they have to pay certain things, or they lose draft 10 spots in the draft, whatever it is. But what's the teams that don't spend anything get? Well, to me, this offseason, we talked about it back in February. It wasn't that the Dodgers got everybody. It's that nobody tried to get those guys. When anybody easily did it. Like, you look at a team like the Brewers. Brewers are a first-place team. Brewers signed one significant free agent this winter. It was Jose Quintana in March. Like, think about that. So, to me, I love Bryce for this because Bryce, as you know, is kind of a poster child for this because you look at the AAVs. Bryce Harper, remember, took till spring training to get a deal when he was a free agent, and he had to take a 13-year deal just to maximize the average annual value. So the AAV stuff kind of also is a hindrance to the sport in a sense because teams just stretch out the money over X amount of years instead of just ponying up what they need to pony up. So I love that Bryce did this. I saw Nick Castellanos did something like this as well. The Phillies are already pissed at baseball because they felt that their starters were slighted over Jacob Mizorowski. So probably not the best idea for Manfred to go to Phillies camp anyway. Like that. So I think, again, we read us on the iSports Radio blog, but to me, the cap if the owners are dug in, we're not getting baseball in 27, or we'll get delayed.
I agree 100%. I think this is going to be one of the most contentious fights in recent memory between the owners and the players. And don't forget, you bring up Bryce Harper is absolutely correct. He was the poster child. His year, I believe, he was a free agent before the 2019 season. And but it was not just him. It was also Manny Machado, who also had to wait until I believe it was the beginning of March before he signed his deal with the Padres, which he signed a 10-year deal. So both of those guys waiting that long through winter meetings and everything, that was one of the first moments, at least I can recall in my fandom, where they really started to have this conversation of, wait, like, how teams aren't really looking to spend money. And that's the problem and to your point, it's not that the Dodgers are spending money. It's that there are only like 5 or 6 teams that actually are spending, and everybody else is like, I don't want to pay for Manny Machado. I don't want to pay for a future Hall of Famer. That's ridiculous. Why would I do that when I can trot out my minimum salary under second year of team control third baseman who's going to put up .2 WAR for the entire season? Why would I do that to my team? Yeah. But no, I think it's going to be a contentious fight. It's going to be an ugly fight, and there's going to be numerous, I can already see it now. There's going to be numerous reports of, oh, they're having a meeting and nothing happened. Oh, they're having a meeting and one side stormed out. Oh, they're having a meeting and everybody started yelling at each other. I can already see it happening. I think the last time there was a near lockout, it wasn't until like right before the season where finally they were like, okay. We got a deal. So we're good. All right. But yes, we'll see how that all develops. But so far, not looking particularly great. Moving on to other news now, we do have some sadder news. Ryne Sandberg, legend of the game, Hall of Famer for the from 2005, passed away. Former, basically Cubs great. Also was a manager for the Phillies for several years, and actually started his career with the Phillies. But yes. Passed away at the age of 65. Sad news indeed. Ricky, what were your thoughts on this? Obviously, very sad.
Yeah, that's definitely our thoughts out to his family. Our thoughts out to Cubs Nation. This is a tough loss. One, of course, passing away due to battling cancer. That's a big one. But there's like 2 players I think of with the Cubs. When the Cubs name pops up, Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks, and Ryne Sandberg. And you think about Ryne Sandberg, probably one of the more dominant players in the 1980s, was dominant in 1984 when he won the MVP, made the All-Star team essentially over the course of 10 straight years. One of the better second basemen in that era, one of the better second basemen of all time. Again, to play 16 years and to play the bulk of it at what's outside of the 13 games he played with the Phillies with one organization, it stinks that he didn't really get to be a part of like a lot of playoff teams. I know there was the one year where the Cubs had a 2-0 lead to the Padres and they couldn't close the deal in the postseason. But this is somebody that the Cub fan base has become very attached to, somebody that really relates to them. I can only imagine what somebody like Adam is feeling, because I'm sure that was somebody that he was watching, probably was one of those big time players. So to lose some, especially after the Hall of Fame ceremony, when you have those guys that are all there and one, like the greatest of the greats in one building, and then 2 days later, or a day later, to have that happen has to be heartbreaking for the sport. So our best to all those hurting from a loss for the sport and a loss in general.
Absolutely. Yes. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and fans there. Just a list of some of the accolades here. As you mentioned, 10-time All-Star, made 10 consecutive All-Star teams from 1984 to 1993. He was the 1984 National League MVP. He also was a 7-time Silver Slugger in that span, was a 9-time, won 9 consecutive Gold Gloves. That's impressive for sure. And of course, as I mentioned, inducted into the Baseball Baseball Hall of Fame in 2005. Also has his number 23 retired by the Cubs. Also did some wonderful charity work outside of the game as well. So unfortunate passing, and once again, our thoughts and prayers to the families. Moving on now, we do have some pretty significant injury news from this past week. Obviously, Ricky, well familiar with the first name on this list as Aaron Judge, landed on the injury list with a lat strain, correct? Is it a tear or strain? I don't remember which one it was. I know it's his lat, right?
I believe it's his elbow.
Elbow. Okay. So with an elbow injury, but we also have Byron Buxton, all-star for Minnesota. He lands on the injured list with a rib cage injury. And then just earlier today, I believe it was, or maybe late yesterday, Jacob Wilson, all-star shortstop for the Athletics, he landed on the injured list with a fractured arm. So 3 all-stars in pretty much 3 days. I think it might be 4 days going down. Pretty significant blows. Obviously, for the Yankees, a major blow as they're trying to get themselves back on track. But Ricky, take it away. How significant are these injuries at this stage of the season, especially for teams like the Yankees, who are hot in the playoff race, and Minnesota, who's trying their darndest to try to hang on?
Well, I was going to say, the latter two, I don't really know how much it affects. Jacob Wilson, I mean, he's all-star season, like you said. Unfortunately, the A's aren't really going anywhere this year, so I don't know how much we'll see of Jacob Wilson the rest of the way, because there's not really an incentive to rush him back necessarily if you're not fighting for anything. Byron Buxton is just sad because it feels like we're never going to see this guy be healthy for the bulk of the season. And he's got so much talent. We got Steam in the home run derby, which is pretty cool. Twins were relevant for a while. I don't know really how much they're in it. They're 10.5 back in the Central. They're 5 back in the wild card. They dealt Chris Paddock to the Tigers. So to me, the Buxton injury doesn't really do much. The Twins, I thought, were already stellars to begin with. So I don't really know if that changes. The Judge stuff is interesting because if Aaron Judge had to have Tommy John surgery, I think the Yankees would have been sellers. I think they would have looked at this team and said, look, we've been awful since June. We just lost our best player. He's not coming back. I don't really know how they're going to recover. At least now, it sounds like he's going to miss 10 days to 2 weeks, come back and do the throwing program while he's just a DH, which I think is actually a benefit. Now, it does hurt a guy like Giancarlo Stanton because he has to learn to play the outfield again. And trust me, I'm not a big fan of watching Stanton play the outfield unless it's right field Yankee Stadium because no ground to cover, or left field at Fenway Park. The Yankees already added an outfield, infield type in Rosario. I'm sure they're looking for another outfielder at the deadline. The name Harrison Bader, I think, has come to mind from Minnesota. Maybe they bring him back to the Bronx. I don't know if it'll be a significant outfielder because they need pitching. But if they had lost Aaron Judge, I think the season would have been over. I think at least now that he's back, hopefully shortly, it does keep their hopes alive in what is a very weak American League. And they got some help from the Blue Jays, which we'll get into tonight, that they got swept in doubleheader. So if the Yankees can win, they stay within 3 games in the loss column, which looks good considering a week ago. Yankees have bigger issues, but which we can get into later on. But I think if Judge was out this season, then the Yankees would essentially be out for the season.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I do wonder how this kind of guides their approach to the deadline, because like you said, also, I mean, it's a couple of weeks. He'll be DHing when he comes back. I'm with you. I'm very fascinated to see Giancarlo Stanton back in the outfield. That is going to be an interesting experiment to watch, especially for a team that very recently has been having some significant defensive woes. So I'll be curious to see how they manage, how they balance that situation. Moving on now, we are to our live score update. Of course, it is Tuesday night, which means every MLB team is playing, and we actually have several finals already on the books. We had the Guardians taking down the Rockies 10-4 earlier in the day here. We also had the Tigers beating up on the Diamondbacks 12-2. I'm sure our colleague Alden was super thrilled about that result. There, we also had a double-header sweep with the Orioles, of all teams, taking down the Blue Jays in both games of the doubleheader, which featured an oddity that I was going to bring up in the trade deadline, but the Orioles trading reliever Sir Anthony Dominguez to the Blue Jays in the middle of the doubleheader. They played game one. In between, the deal was agreed to. Sir Anthony walked down the hallway in the clubhouse and donned a Blue Jays jersey and actually pitched in relief for the Blue Jays in game two. So a fun little wrinkle in that one. But yes, the Orioles sweep both of those games. As you mentioned, a little bit of help there for the Yankees. Those are the finals so far. Currently live, we've got the Yankees hosting the Rays. They're up 6-4 there in the middle of the eighth inning. Yankees coming up to bat. The Dodgers and Reds are tied 4-4. That one at the end of the seventh here. We've got the Royals leading the Braves 4-3. That one in the bottom of the sixth. The Royals have 2 men on and no men out, so they are threatening there. The Red Sox beating up on the Twins a little bit. They're up 6-1 there in Minnesota in the bottom of the sixth. We've got the Brewers beating the Cubs 5-2. Put out a PBA for our colleague Adam Karnick. I hope he's doing okay. But Brewers, that one in the top of the sixth. We have the Phillies leading the White Sox 6-0. Jesus Luzardo with seven scoreless in that one. And the Marlins continuing their hot streak. It looks like they are leading the Cardinals 3-0. That one is in the top of the sixth. And we have the Nationals and the Astros. That game tied at 2 in the top of the fifth. Later on tonight, we've got the Angels hosting the Rangers in Anaheim. We've got the Mets visiting the Padres. We have Pirates at Giants. And to finish it all off, we have the Mariners facing off with the Athletics in Sacramento. So those are your live scores. Now we're moving on to our Who's Hot, Who's Not segment, where we take a look at how teams have been playing this past week and who's been doing great and who maybe not doing so well. So, Ricky, we'll send it over to you here. Who are your Who's Not and Who's Not for the week?
My Who's Hot, I'm going to go to the AL West. I'm going to go to the Texas Rangers. I mean, they've now won 8 of their last 10, and it's been very quiet with them. Of course, this is a team that won the World Series 2 years ago, but they made a hitting coach change during the season with Brett Boone now in the mix. And you look up now in Texas, who is one of the better pitching ERAs in all baseball, is only 4 back in the West. And let's keep in mind that the Astros have had 18 players on the injured list this year, so we don't really know what this Astro team is going to look like. You look at the wild card, and Texas is only a half game behind the Boston Red Sox as of right now. I like what DeGrom's doing despite getting blown out last night in Anaheim by the Angels. You still have guys like Nate Eovaldi. You still have a Texas team that I think just needs to find some pieces. But again, it's the American League. It's terrible. Texas is going to hang around. They've got a big series coming up this weekend, which we will get into, of course, later on. But the Rangers will be definitely positioned to gain some ground this weekend, at least if not separate themselves in the field a little bit. But they've got a good manager leading them. I think this is kind of the Rangers team that we expected them to be, but I'm interested to see if they make moves between now and Thursday and how aggressive Chris Young is. And who's not is to me is the Giants. It's amazing because the Giants made the biggest aggressive move before the deadline to get Rafi Devers. And they've been worse. And I was watching them play the Mets this weekend, and Devers was playing first base. He was kicking the ball around. Fortunately, he wasn't making any errors, but it looked really weird. The Giants just lost Landon Root to the injured list, so they're already lacking in pitching again. Logan Webb hasn't been Logan Webb like we used to been seeing. And now they find themselves not only 8 back in the West, they find themselves 4 out of the wild card and behind 2 other teams just to get to San Diego. So now does Buster Posey take a guy like Camilo Doval and trade him because relievers are going to be of high commodity? Does he try to sell other pieces off? It's amazing how fast the Giants went from buyers to potentially sellers. they are closer to being behind the Marlins than they are to the NL wildcard race. And that's been a kind of a big surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Giants certainly struggling, and they've been struggling now probably for a few weeks. I think even going back to the before the All-Star break, we've kind of been looking at them, talking about their struggles. For my who, I'm going to start with my who's not, and it's because it's a team that you brought up. I'm going to go to Houston. They lost 5 in a row. I don't know how you get 4 games swept by the Athletics, but they certainly did. And then you lost to the Nationals. I'm sorry, if you're losing to the Nationals, you should automatically be on a who's not list, given the way that team has been playing. And then even right now, as it stands, they're tied in their games. So Astros hitting a little bit of a rough patch. Obviously, they still have a 3-game lead in the NL West, so they still have a little bit of a cushion to work with. And obviously, you brought up all the players on the injured list. So that's certainly impacting their play. So hopefully they can right the ship. Maybe over time, they start to get a couple more of those guys back, and that'll help them get back on course. But right now, things not looking so great for Houston. And then for my who's hot, I'm going to go with the Brewers. They've fought their way back in this National League Central race. They now have the 1-game lead over the Cubs. Also, side note, the best record in all of baseball, very quietly. And they're currently beating the Cubs. So if they finish off that tonight, now they have a 2-game lead, which is definitely critical. So yeah, I would say the Brewers are my who's hot. And I'm going to give an honorable mention here. I got to give a little bit of homer pick, but the Orioles do have the longest winning streak in baseball right now at 5 games. I know it doesn't matter. I know they're out of it, but it's still a point of pride to win 5 in a row, especially 3 of them being against the Blue Jays. And in those 5 games, they've outscored their opponents 53-11. Again, I know it's pretty much irrelevant at this point, but I'm still going to toot the horn there just a little bit, just a little. Moving on now, we've got our upcoming series to watch for this weekend before we head on to our break. Looking ahead at the schedule, as we head into the month of August, we've got some pretty intriguing matchups on the docket. Ricky, we'll start with you. What are your matchups to watch for the weekend?
So I'll hint with the one I just gave, and I think to me it's Texas at Seattle, because I'm interested to really see how both these teams look going into this game. Does Texas make that move? Does Seattle add on to the Josh Naylor move that they made with another big one? They've got the pitching prospects to do it. Do they end up getting another bat? Do they add another arm? So much going on. Jerry DiPoto's got to eventually invest in a roster. Maybe it's this one. Naylor at least goes a step in that direction. I love the way he's played so far. He's actually been, I think, doing things that he didn't really do with Arizona. So it's been kind of a nice surprise, but that's going to be a real interesting series for sure. And the other one to me is going to be I'm going to keep it I'm going to go with Giants and Mets at Citi Field. Mets just swept the Giants. Again, where is San Francisco heading into this series? But the Mets have been playing some pretty good baseball. Before last night, when they got walked off by the Padres, they'd won 7 in a row. Ronnie Mauricio had a game-tying home run off Robert Suarez that looked like it was going to really change the game. What has happened with the Mets between now and Friday after they added Gregory Soto? What does David Stearns have up his sleeve to make a deal? We know they don't really go big game hunt at the deadline, but David Stearns usually finds a way to improve on the margins. Does Mark Vientos get traded? That's something to watch for sure. But the Mets, to me, I think are starting to find their groove. Now, you're not going to find getting a lot of separation because even with a 7-game win streak that they had, they're only a game and a half up on the Phillies. So it's been kind of a battle between those two teams. But the Mets, considering their last 10 or 11 games when Giants, Padres, Giants, they can end off pretty well. I think they would gladly take that to begin August.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a critical series there, especially when you were talking about the Giants and their recent struggles. They got to find some way to get back on track if they want to stay in this race. I am also going to I'm going to head over to the East Coast. I'm looking at Detroit and Philly. That's a really interesting matchup to me. 2 of the best teams in their respective leagues. I'm really interested to see Scooball versus Ranger Suarez on Friday night. I think that's a really intriguing pitching matchup. Jack Flaherty versus Zach Wheeler on Saturday, also a really good one. and then the Phillies march out Christopher Sanchez on Sunday. So the Phillies have their probably three of their best lined up for the series. Detroit has their top two lined up, so that's going to be a really good matchup there. I also like Houston and Boston. We just talked a little bit about Houston being a little on a cold streak. Boston is a team that is certainly working their way up the rankings. They currently own the third wild card by half a game. So you got two East American League playoff teams duking it out, but both have also only won 4 of their last 10, not necessarily on the hottest streaks. So I think both probably looking to get a little bit more momentum here to begin August. That will do it for the first half of our show. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to jump into our minor league spotlight and then, of course, talk trade deadline, the big topic of the week. So do not go away. You are listening to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go. For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We are on to the second half of our show. Before we jump in, we did have a comment that I overlooked from Taryn Rodriguez saying that he thinks it would be quite funny if the Astros choke the division away, but he doesn't think they will. So we'll see. We'll see if Taryn's laughing at the end of the regular season or not. There's still a lot of baseball to go. You never know. I believe when the Phillies won the World Series back in 2008, at this stage, they were 10 games behind the Mets, I believe, at the trade deadline or something incredible. And they managed to come back and win the division. So stranger things have happened in the world of baseball. Now we're going to jump into our minor league spotlight, where we highlight player or happenings going on in the minors this week. So, Ricky, kick it off. Who is your minor league baseball spotlight?
So I'm going to keep it more so toward a promotion to the big leagues, at least for we'll do one that's going to make the majors and one that could be on his way to the majors. One guy who's at the major league level right now is Alex Freeland, called up by the Dodgers. Max Muncy's on a rehab assignment. Kike Hernandez is out. Tommy Edmonds out. Ha-Seong Kim is out. And Alex Freeland, we talked about him earlier this year, but He's actually been pretty good. Now, the numbers aren't outstanding in Oklahoma City in the PCL, 253, batting average, 377 on base, 12 homers, 17 steals. But he leads the PCL in walks with 75. And that's a pretty good mark for a kid to show that amount of plate discipline. Fourth in runs scored, fourth in doubles, seventh in RBIs. This guy was drafted in 2020. So the Dodgers, again, they always seem to find guys that make an impact. Maybe Freeland is that guy. And I just can't ignore, I would be for spotlighting Spencer Jones. He has been absolutely incredible. 3 home run game last week against Rochester. He got 13 home runs at AAA. It's not even been there like 3.5 weeks. It's really amazing what he's done. And I don't think the Yankees were ever going to trade him. I don't think there's a player out there. I thought it would be Class A if there was a player. I don't know if there's a difference maker that necessarily makes you trade Jones, but now you have to think, is Spencer Jones part of it? And I think the problem the Yankees have is there's no room for him. They're already playing guys out of position, but talk about a guy in Spencer Jones, we had questions about the strikeout rate, and he still might be there, but he has handled AAA so well that if he's not going to make the majors this year, he's definitely in the mix to maybe make the majors next year. And it's going to make an interesting thing with Dominguez and Jones and Judge. And you're starting to see Spencer Jones. He's made changes to his swing that does give Yankee. He's not going to be Aaron Judge. I'm not saying that, but it's definitely good to see him kind of dominate the AAA level that I don't think people expect him to dominate it so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Jones has been just completely tearing it up at the AAA level, and makes you wonder how much longer they're going to keep him down there. Obviously, you mentioned the complexity of their current situation. But hey, it's a good problem to have when you have guys who are ready to hit at the MLB level. That's certainly not a bad place to be. I'm going to keep it local with some unfortunate news, and that was, you and I discussed it before we went live, the Travis Sakura injury for the Nationals. Travis Sakura was the Nationals' top pitching prospect. He was also one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball, I believe ranked 38th on MLB.com or somewhere in the 30s. But he unfortunately went down with an injury, and it just came out earlier this week or over the weekend that he has to have Tommy John surgery. So he'll be gone for the rest of 2025. Most of 2026, most likely, he'll be spending his time working his way back. So that's a pretty big blow for the Nationals organization with the way he was pitching and the way he was on a tear. Maybe could have made the big league team midway through, or maybe after trade deadline or at roster expansion 2026. Now it'll definitely be pushed back to 2027 for sure. So that was an unfortunate bit of news. Also, news I saw, the Athletics calling up infielder Darnell Hernandez. Now, the reason why I bring this one up is because Darnell Hernandez was a former Orioles prospect who they traded to the Athletics for Cole Irving a few years back. And this is his second or third stint in the big league. So I hope he gets the stick. This is obviously in response to the Jacob Wilson injury, as he is also a shortstop. So hopefully he'll take advantage of the opportunity and get some extended playing time. Now we move on to the big topic. Of course, the big one for the week, the thing everybody's talking about other than gambling rings and yelling at commissioners. It is the trade deadline, which is Thursday. I believe for some reason I have 6 p.m. stuck in my head. Ricky, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He's shaking his head, so I got 6 p.m. right there. There have been a handful of deals so far, looking at the ESPN.com trade deadline tracker. So far, we have obviously the deal I mentioned earlier with the Blue Jays acquiring closer Sir Anthony Dominguez from the Orioles. Looking down the list, we have the Brewers acquired catcher Danny Jansen from the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays actually then turned around and acquired catcher Nick Fortes from the Marlins. So a double move there. The Detroit Tigers acquired right-handed pitcher Chris Paddock from the Minnesota Twins. The Braves acquired Eric Feed from the St. Louis Cardinals. The Yankees actually have made a pair of moves. I'll lump both of those together, as they've acquired both utility man Ahmed Rosario from the Nationals and third baseman Ryan McMahon from the Colorado Rockies. Couple of key moves there. The Mets have acquired reliever Gregory Soto from the Baltimore Orioles. That's three relievers, actually, that the Orioles have sent out, if you include the Brian Baker trade from a couple weeks ago. The Mariners have acquired first baseman Josh Naylor from Arizona, and the Royals have acquired outfielder Randall Grichuk from the Arizona Diamondbacks, kind of proving our belief, the Grichuk and Naylor deals, that the Diamondbacks are indeed going to be sellers of their veterans at the deadline. So, of all of these moves, Ricky, which ones really stand out to you as most significant? Kind of maybe if there are any kind of surprises in there, teams that you didn't think were expecting moves. What are your thoughts on what we've seen so far?
So I'll do one that's been pretty good, one that I'm kind of surprised by. The one that I think is pretty good that it gets overlooked. I like the Ryan McMahon deal for the Yankees. And the reason I do is because I know Yankee fans were looking at Eugenio Suarez, but Suarez also has defensive issues. He's also a free agent at the end of the year. And the price is astronomically high, I'm sure, for any team trying to acquire him. So the Yankees should stay away from that. Brian Hayes is okay. He's not great. So the best guy to get is McMahon, who, yes, he leads nationally in strikeouts, but I think he benefits from a change of scenery. We kind of saw the Yankees take this chance with DJ LeMahieu when they got him from Colorado, and it worked out for him. McMahon, look, to have a decent third baseman that can hit a little bit, has some pop, but also is a very good defender. And the Yankees need defense at third because Anthony Volpe is so bad defensively at short. First base is pretty good with Goldschmidt. Second base is okay with Jazz. But McMahon at least is under team control for until the next couple of years. So they have their third baseman in the short term. They only give up a high prospect level. I think it was Griffin Herring, who was like their number 8 prospect, and like a Josh Boers and other relievers. So they didn't go into their big prospect pool to make a deal. And I kind of like taking a flyer on McMahon, see what he can do. The Quisling one's the Royals. You and I talked about this in our Bullpen Bulletin chat the other day when the Royals gave Seth Lugo a 2-year extension. What is Kansas City doing? And it's like, what it bothers me about the deadline is teams like, we're going to sell, but we're also going to buy to get controllable pieces for next year. Isn't that what the winner's for? Like, that to me, that doesn't make any sense. And it's like, to me, it's like, be honest with your fan base. Because with the Royals having the injury to Reagans, now Chris Bubich is out, the Royals are not going anywhere. They don't have any pitching. You're signing Seth Lugo for 2 years. What are you going to be in 2 years? Like, I know the Central is wide open, but what are they? And I think that's what we're kind of puzzled with Kansas City, where they could have got something very valuable for Seth Lugo. And was it worth it giving him to stay an extra 2 years there? I'm not sure. I'm very confused with Kansas City. I don't know what else they're going to deal, and yet they go out and add a Randall Grichuk. How does Randall Grichuk help you between now and the rest of the year? Unless they truly believe that they're going to make a run. But again, 10 out in the Central, and the wild card right now, they're 4.5 back, and they're behind 3 teams just to get to Boston. To me, I don't see where the run is coming from Kansas City without any pitching.
Yeah, Kansas City's a little bit puzzling. I did have a theory. This was a couple weeks ago, where I thought that they could be sneaky buyers, if anything, because I believe this was before the Bubich injury. So at that point, their pitching was looking really good. So I'm curious to see how they formulate the rest of the offseason. But the initial or the rest of the trade deadline, the initial return looks like they are at least going to attempt to be buyers. I do like the pair of Yankee moves. I think, Rosario is interesting. I'm curious how he's going to fit in. Defensively, he has not been the greatest for the Nationals this season, but maybe just being an average defender will at least help the Yankees, especially with their recent struggles defensively. Obviously, the McMahon deal going to work out. They're already working out really well for them. He's already playing good defense in there. Not a lot of big moves yet. I think, teams are kind of waiting out. Also, I'm sure asking prices are astronomically high, as you mentioned, for guys like Eugenio Suarez. And then kind of, seeing who really is selling and who really is buying kind of at the deadline, which brings us to our fun trade deadline game of the week, where we are going to play trade deadline yay or nay, where we are going to go back and forth asking each other different names who have been rumored to be on the market, who have been discussed extensively on the market, and give it whether it's a yay or a nay in our opinion. So, Ricky, how many do you want to do? 3 each? Does that feel like a fair number to go through?
Sure.
Maybe 3 each.
I like it.
You like 3 each? All right. So I'm going to let you start. So you're going to ask me a player, and I'm going to say yay or nay and why.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep it with Cleveland because with all the stuff we talked about. Stephen Kwan, good leadoff outfielder, contact hitter. Been a lot of rumors about him in the last 48 hours. So do you think Stephen Kwan goes?
That's a great one to start with. I'm going to go with a yay on Kwan. Cleveland has shown in the past that they are willing to deal their guys for the right price when they deem it necessary. We kind of saw it in the offseason when they dealt away Andres Jimenez in a move that kind of surprised people, but they are willing to make moves. They are willing to sell pieces. And with the way things are going right now with the drama with the Class A and all of the gambling stuff, I think that they're going to probably see that this season might be going down the tubes a bit for them and try to recoup some value and come back for 2026 when ideally they have top prospect Travis Bazana will ideally become the fixture of the team. So I'm going to go with a yay on Kwan, especially with the need of outfield bats I see across the league. So now, sorry, were you going to?
No, go ahead.
No. So now mine, there's one that I have seen mentioned a bit in rumblings here and there, actually for a couple of years now. So I'm going to bring this one to you. Ryan Helsley of the Cardinals, closer.
I'm going to say yay on that. I think you look at the Cardinals, they're really fading fast. They struggled in Colorado. They struggled over the weekend. They're clearly not in a position to where they're going to be able to contend. They're 9 back in the Central right now, and the wild card race, they're 3.5 back, but they're struggling to beat the Rockies and the Marlins. I don't really know what to expect from St. Louis. And Helsley's a guy that, hey, the Cardinals could say, we're going to re-sign you in the winter. If he really loves to be in St. Louis, he can always go back there. To me, the market for relievers is so astronomical, and I think teams are waiting to see who makes that first domino. There are so many teams looking for that guy, especially now Class A can't get traded. If Duran's not available from the Twins, Helsley becomes the next available guy. And you look at teams like the Yankees, you look at the Mets, you look at Toronto, I think could be in play. There are so many teams are a bullpen guy away from making a significant push, and whether it's as a setup guy or as a closer, Ryan Helsley could really do a lot for a contender. So I'm going to say yay.
Good.
All right, so for player number 2, I'm going to make this a little bit tougher. Mitch Keller.
Ooh, Mitch Keller, starter of the Pittsburgh Pirates. You know what? I'm going to go with a yay on Keller. I don't think the Pirates' asking price is going to be particularly extensive. And you just look across the league, there's so many teams with so many injuries at starting pitchers. Pitching always feels like it's a bit of a premium, and Keller is pretty solid overall. He's not the ace that's going to solidify your staff for the postseason, but as a guy who's going to bolster maybe the middle to the back of the rotation for the late season push, I think he'd be a fine acquisition. I think you look at teams that need pitching, which you could probably put almost everybody in the league on the list. I think he gets dealt. I think, Pittsburgh, they're not going anywhere this year. Who knows when they're going anywhere? I doubt I supremely doubt that they make a deal with Skeens. So I think they do need to they are going to try to offsell something in order to get some value out of the trade deadline. So Keller's a very reasonable option there. I'm going to say yay on Keller.
So really quickly, I'm going to
Now,
say
this is
nay
an
on.
interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm going to say nay on Keller, and it's not because I think the Pirates. I think the Pirates are afraid to deal him. I think they're more inclined to trade a David Bednar or Dennis Santana. I think Ben Cherington's got to be really careful because this is somebody that's really, if they're not going to ever trade Skeens for a Monster Hall, it's really the only starting pitcher they really have a deal, especially Jared Jones being injured. So I don't really know where it depends. I guess if Mitch Keller gets traded, Ben Cherington thinks he's safer than he is. But that one I could see, especially with the record not being so great. Do teams really pay up a lot and do they really think Mitch Keller is a difference maker on the market? I think that is going to be. I think the peripheral show he can be okay, but I don't think he's going to be that guy that turns a team into an instant World Series contender either.
Yeah. If he is traded, it will be more so for a team looking for some depth and to bolster their rotation down the stretch. Would be my guess. So he wouldn't return a great haul probably, but Pittsburgh always. I feel like they're perpetually selling. So I don't know if you can ever really write a Pirate off of the list. In all reality, this is an interesting one. A player on a team that I don't think we thought would be in this position at this stage in the game, but a name who I've seen a few rumblings on, Marcell Ozuna of the Atlanta Braves.
I'm going to say yay, and I think it's really because the Braves, I mean, we talked about them the last couple of weeks. Braves don't really have anything to trade. Like, you look at their core, it's all set. They're all under long-term contracts. Is anybody taking a flyer on Raisel Iglesias? I'm not exactly sure. And the Braves took even more hits. You had Grant Holmes now out. The Braves are out their entire rotation. And to me, like they had to pick up Eric Fetty just to get a pitcher. And they traded for Carlos Carrasco, who had been awful with the Yankees and kind of not so good. It means okay at AAA, but that's how bad the Braves are right now, at least from a pitching perspective. Ozuna also is a veteran. I think they're going to try to do what they can to get him out of there. Maybe freeze up a spot for a younger player. Maybe freeze up something. I don't know how much they'll get, but I think I think they're just going to find a way to trade maybe one of the only pieces they have. I don't think they'll get much back, but I think Ozuna will be playing in a different uniform by Thursday night.
Fair enough.
All right, and the last one, I thought I did want to go another pitcher. It's not the guy we talked about in our pre-show meeting. I'm going to go a little different. Sandy Alcantara.
Ooh, Alcantara. Interesting. So, I mean, again, you can kind of, if you wanted to be kind of lazy about it, you could go de facto to, oh, everybody needs pitching. So, anybody could be on the market. Alcantara has not had a great season. He's got a 6.66, which is a very unfortunate ERA for a couple of reasons. ERA so far with Miami. I know teams are desperate for pitching. I know that they are going to be looking at any and all options. And yes, Alcantara did just have a fantastic start for the Marlins this past week against the Padres, but I don't know if Miami, who by the way is a team who's pretty hot and might not be looking to necessarily sell a ton at the deadline, more just kind of stay the course and keep being a nuisance team. I don't know if they're going to get the right value back for him. I think, unless he's a free agent after the season, which he very well could be, I don't have that in front of me. If he's a free agent and unlikely to sign, then yeah, I mean, you give the offer. But I think if you have any type of control, I think you got to keep him, if anything, to see if maybe he can right whatever's going wrong for the season and he is under contract for 2026. So yeah, you have that control. I just don't think the value's right for him right now, given how he's pitched so far. I think you're going to get a minimal return, and it's just not going to be worth your while. I think you're better off just letting him ride it out, see if he can do a little bit better during the last third of the season, and maybe if his value improves, then you can look to maybe deal him in the offseason. But I don't think the value's good right now. I'm going to go with a nay. All right, and for your third one, gosh, we've talked so much about pitchers. I want to try to maybe change it up a bit. Let's see. Well, I asked you about Ozuna. Okay, let's see. Because I was gonna, like I said, we've talked too much about pitchers. I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'll go with one that's local to me, not a national, obviously, because they don't really have many guys worth mentioning. I'm going to go with, and we'll dig a little deep on this one. Ramon Laureano of the Baltimore Orioles, having a really good season, by the way, an 870 OPS, has basically been a regular everyday starter and is under contract through 2026.
So I'm going to say nay on this. I think because I just want to say nay on somebody. So I think we're going to go with that as well. But I think you look at the Orioles and think about all the business they have to get done between now and Thursday. You're looking at Ryan O'Hearn.
Yep.
You're looking at Charlie Morton.
Yep.
You're probably looking at Cedric Mullins. So
Definitely.
That's 3 rentals that you would think are going to have to find a way out of there. So that's going to make Mike Elias very busy. And I think there's going to be between the outfield market. Maybe this is somebody that, Mike Elias loves those bargains and loves trying to find guys that can make an impact. Maybe they look at Laureano as the equivalent of like what's the guy from the Astros that was kind of like the Marwin Gonzalez type, where he's a player that just makes an impact wherever. I'm just saying no, and I think it's just because Mike Elias is going to be on the phone so long. Maybe it's something like he would be the kind of guy, Mike, that if we still had the August deadline, I think he would be gone in the August deadline.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, you're right. He's going to be busy with those 3, and also, I mean, he's already traded the whole bullpen. I don't think there's really anybody else in the bullpen he's going to deal. But there are other intriguing names as well that is going to make the next 48 hours very busy for Elias. So I agree with you. I'm leaning towards a nay for Laureano, partially because I really like him. But I mean, I could see it happening, especially with the way he's played. By the way, Taryn with an interesting note on this one. Acuna was just removed from the Braves game with Achilles tightness. So the Braves really cannot catch a break here in 2025. Now we come to our Around the Diamond segment where we talk about whatever is really burning on our minds tonight, baseball wise. So, Ricky, take it away with your Around the Diamond topic.
So going off of Taryn's comment, if that is a significant injury, it hurts the Braves. It hurts the sport, because Saturday night at Bristol Motor Speedway in Tennessee is the Braves and the Reds. And the Braves are already down. They're down a bunch of different players, down a rotation. And now, okay, we want to market the Braves. The guy we would market to play baseball on a NASCAR track is not going to be there playing. So that, to me, that is a huge, significant blow if he can't play in that game Saturday night. But baseball on a NASCAR track, look, we've seen baseball do some crazy things. We've seen the Field of Dreams games. We've seen the Little League Classic. To me, one of my favorites was when they did Marlins Braves at Fort Bragg, when they played baseball at a military base. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I believe so. Yes, I remember that.
That was, I think, a fun, different type of feel. We've seen the London series. We've seen Japan. We've seen at least Saturday night right now, Chase Burns is expected to pitch for the Reds. So at least you get something. The Reds at least are pretty good. So my question for you based off that is, again, I think this will be great for the sport. And I think it'll be fun to kind of see what the place looks like. If you could get a baseball game played anywhere that's not a Major League Baseball stadium, where would you want to see one played?
Ooh, Man, anywhere that isn't a Major League Baseball stadium. Gosh, there are so many good ones. Hmm. For some reason, this is the first venue that popped into my head, and I think it's because of its iconicness, and it's probably not the most creative answer, but I'm gonna go with the Rose Bowl in Southern California. It's such an iconic stadium, such a pretty stadium. I think it would be any sporting event in the Rose Bowl could be super fun. So I'm gonna just quick off the top of my head, I would say the Rose Bowl. I mean, any NASCAR track is just fun because you've got those giant infields in NASCAR tracks that you can use as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Rose Bowl. Just kind of answer off the top of my head.
So for me, I'm gonna go with I'm gonna take it to where I think we can kind of look at, especially with the Hall of Fame game recently. How about a game in Cooperstown? I
That'd
think
be
that would
fun.
be pretty cool to have that happen. I mean, we could also talk about the LA Coliseum.
Hmm.
That'd be pretty cool. Dodgers used to play there back in like the late 50s, early 60s or so. So maybe that building, of course, has been so iconic with sports that you get something there. If you had to go extreme, I kind of like your idea. I kind of thought about like the big house for a Tigers game or something like that. Like, can you? We've seen football stadiums turn into like baseball stadiums for football games. Like we've seen
Right.
that with like bowl games. Like, can we see football stadiums turn into baseball stadiums? I guess you could because we saw the A's and Raiders do it, the Padres and the
Yeah,
Chargers do it for years. But I'm
for
thinking like
sure.
I want that 100,000 college football style vibe going on because I don't really know if you could
Gosh,
really
yeah,
recreate
absolutely.
another.
Another one I thought of was the horseshoe in for Ohio State, and you orient it so that center field is the opening in the shoe, and you just have fans in the opening for home run balls, just nailing dingers out through the middle of the shoe.
I like that one. I like that one. I'm trying to think if you can't really recreate another baseball movie like Field of Dreams. We can't really like, we've done that already. Like there's no
Right.
other baseball movie you really could recreate. I, I'd love to see what baseball creative marketing could come up with. But again, we didn't think NASCAR track, and here we are on Saturday getting a baseball game and a NASCAR track.
Right, right. So I mean, any possibility. The book is open. The world is our oyster on that one. So for my around the diamond topic, I'm going to highlight a couple of guys who maybe aren't getting a ton of national press, but are playing pretty good baseball. One is for the Orioles. They've had several guys return from injury. Of course, right at the wrong time as the team is essentially eliminated from the playoffs. But Tyler O'Neill homered in four straight games in this 5-game winning streak. And he has really come on strong. I mentioned Laureano kind of in the trade deadline. Another guy who has come up and started playing really well, a guy you mentioned after a slump, Cedric Mullins, has made several not only great hits, but also really good plays in the outfield for the Orioles over the past few games. So his impact has been phenomenal. I also wanted to discuss, the name that I know you were burgeoning to ask me during the trade deadline, yay or nay, and you didn't. But I do want to bring up Mackenzie Gore of the Nationals. Now, it has been a very hot topic since he's been rumored to be on the trade market. The only team that I have seen associated with this is the Chicago Cubs. And of course, there have been trade proposals flying left and right. I actually tagged our colleague, Adam Karnick, in one on X a couple days ago that he did not like in the slightest. And it'll be really interesting to see how the situation plays out. obviously you see where the Nationals are. They're still nowhere near contention. A couple of their guys have developed really well. James Wood, although James Wood's in the middle of a pretty significant slump. CJ Abrams, but as a whole, the team is still not quite there. And I can see the logic in, you've got this guy in Gore. He's got 2.5 years of control. You look at what the White Sox just got for Garrett Crochet from the Red Sox, and you think, could you get a similar and or maybe even better trade value where you get maybe 2 or 3 of a team's top prospects, maybe a couple top 100. I can see the logic. I hate the logic that it's there because part of me, when the Nationals develop a really good key player, that I want them to keep them for forever. Call me selfish on that regard, especially a guy from the Juan Soto trade. It does get really funny in the context of the Juan Soto trade when you start subbing out the guys they got for their own trade packages. So what started out as just Juan Soto for 5 players could theoretically develop into Juan Soto for 10 to 15 players down the road, which is really fun to think about. But yes, do I think Gore gets traded? No, because I think the Nationals just end up having too high of an asking price that teams aren't willing to pay. But is he a guy who is destined to be with the Nationals long term? You could argue that he's not. And could you argue that the team is going to be there in the 2.5 years that he's still under control, especially with, say, the Travis Sakura injury and the nagging injuries to guys like Cade Cavalli and Josiah Gray? You could argue that maybe he is part of a deal coming down the pipe. But for now, again, the selfishness in me wants to hold on tight to all of our guys. That will do it for tonight's show. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to Taryn, Larry, and Brian for jumping in the chat room. Thank you to everybody who listened live and everybody who will listen to us later on in the week. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Jerky that's on a whole nother planet. Go to planetjerky.net to get yours today. Also, Seal the Deal Wax Seals, custom wax stamps, perfect for any special occasion. So check them out on Instagram at @SealTheDeal_wax stamps. Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but promotes and donates to mental health research. So go to their website, use code IESR to get 15% off of your purchase. Of course, if you have not done so, follow us on X, TikTok, and YouTube at IE Sports Radio. Of course, also check out the website, IESportsRadio.com. There you will find our merchandise, our show pages, the blog, the Hall of Fame, and so much more. And once again, if you are a fan of the show, please follow us on X. You can follow the show account at VP_Bulletin_IESR. You can follow Ricky at Rickinator555, talking all things baseball and New York sports. Not only, of course, baseball, but football right around the corner. I'm sure the New York teams will be keeping him busy in that regard. You can follow yours truly at IESR_DMB, just complaining about the Orioles and Nationals until it's football season, where I finally might have some hope in some of my teams. And follow Alden at the AZTRL, where he'll be talking all things Arizona sports, and I'm sure not super happy with the way the Diamondbacks are playing right now. We'll be back next week to talk a ton more baseball. We'll, of course, have the trade deadline to wrap up. I'm sure we will see many more moves between now and Thursday evening. And, of course, the ongoing press of the MLB season. We're pretty much at the 2/3 mark, which means we are down to the final stretch with 2 months to go. Teams fighting for position, teams battling it out. It's going to be really interesting down to the wire. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. This has been Mike Patt and Ricky K for the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.